Hi there, I'm Jim.
And I'm Claire.
Let's talk teaching. Welcome to Let's Talk Teaching, a podcast from the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology here at Illinois State University. I'm Jim G. Joining me as usual, Dr. Claire LaMonica, our director here at CTLT. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Jim.
So we are continuing our discussion today that we started last time about syllabuses, the syllabus. And we were talking a lot about the philosophy of the syllabus, how to make it a more welcoming document, something that students can relate to. But of course, the syllabus also has certain parts. It's a very particular animal, and there are some must-have parts of a syllabus that we wanted to talk about today, and maybe talk a little bit about why are they in there. And what function do they perform that kind of meets that overall goal that we were talking about last time of getting students to relate to the syllabus? So what has to be in my syllabus?
Okay, well, the university has provided some guidance for faculty along these lines. And this is information that we actually give out at new faculty orientation each year because we want people to know what the basic expectations are. So let me read you a little bit. This is from the faculty responsibility sections of the faculty. I think it's in the faculty handbook. It's on the policy page.
Yes, part of the university policy.
Policy.
All those number
yes,
pages. Yeah.
And this is what the policy site has to say about syllabi. Faculty should provide students access to a written syllabus, printed or electronic, in a timely fashion, normally the first day of class, for each course that they teach. The syllabus should include specific course information, office hours and location, or other means of faculty availability appropriate to the teaching assignment. So, in other words, if you're teaching an online course, your office hours might be something different.
Right.
It should also include objectives of the course, a tentative assignment and examination schedule, attendance, and other course policies. Faculty members should clearly explain to their students methods of evaluation for the final grade. Faculty should reasonably adhere to the course syllabus and should announce and explain to the class all changes to the syllabus as far in advance as possible. So that outlines some things that you need to do in your syllabus. The University Curriculum Committee has suggested a sort of a template or an organizational structure for the syllabus.
Okay.
And it says that this format is consonant with the Illinois Articulation Initiative submission format and Illinois state policy. So anyway, that's sort of not of much interest to anybody, but that's where it came from.
But I mean, no one's going to get thrown in jail if they deviate a little bit. From that template, right?
No.
We will link to we can on our show page for this episode, we can link to a lot of this stuff, so people can find it easily.
Okay, so the sort of template that is provided by the University Curriculum Committee suggests that the syllabus should include the department's or school prefix, the course number, the course title, and the number of semester credit hours.
Yeah, and I mean that's all pretty common stuff, right?
Right.
And
yes.
that's not
contact hours, including any laboratory or studio hours. So what time is the course meeting?
Yeah.
Office hours and location. Any prerequisites. And notations about any materials fees. It also suggests that you include the catalog description, which I used to think was kind of, really? But actually now I'm sort of down with that. I like that.
Why did you change your mind on that?
Well, I think as I sort of evolved and saw the bigger picture, about and started thinking about how students experience their university as a lot of kind of disjointed classroom experiences. And I think that including the catalog description, at least it reminds them of what they saw when they signed up for the course. And it creates at least the beginnings of a shared vision for the course.
Yes.
Sort of very basic.
Even if sometimes we must admit, although a lot of effort goes into them, I'm sure the catalog description is not the most scintillating reading in the world.
Well, you have to describe the course in, I think it's 25 words or less.
Something like that, right.
It's really, yeah. So they're usually, they're often sentence fragments. They tend to be more, descriptors than anything else.
Right.
But or maybe prescriptive than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, but don't only have that.
Right.
So the next thing that the University Curriculum Committee recommends is that you have a course or overview,
mm-hmm.
which is a paragraph or so description of the course. And this is where you can really elaborate to the students about what that course catalog means. And it's also the place that you can talk about the why. Mm-hmm. that we were talking about before. So this is this overview piece is a great place to get students excited about the possibilities of this course. This mm-hmm. is the invitation to the feast. I mean, this is sort of the key element of that.
Right.
It's not all of it, but it's really key. The University Curriculum Committee says that you should also list specific student outcomes as a result of course participation. So these are what we call learning objectives or mm-hmm. learning goals or learning outcomes. Different people use different words. And if you're in the College of Ed, you have really specific meanings for all those words.
Right.
And the rest of us sort of use them interchangeably. But, mm-hmm. But this is where you're going to tell students basically, what they will know or be able to do as the result of their participation in the course. Mm-hmm. So that's the parenthetical after that is including general education outcomes when appropriate. As someone who, in her not so distant past, co-chaired the Provost Task Force on General Education, I would like to say, if you are teaching a general education course, please, please, please indicate on the syllabus that it's a general education course mm-hmm. and indicate on the syllabus the gen ed outcomes that are mapped onto that course. And if you don't know that information, it's available on the gen ed website,
which is gened.illinoisstate.edu.
There you go. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I couldn't have done that myself.
That's what I'm here for.
That's impressive.
Well, and let me just add to that. I actually taught a gen ed course for the first time in a while last fall, that the COM 110 course that I teach. I and many other people, because there are like 80 sections of it a semester now. And I did that. And I put in those outcomes, and I found that they mapped. Well, you're welcome. And I found that they not only are they mapped to gen ed, but they also, they meshed so well with what I was planning to do anyway with the course. So it's not like it's you're putting this you're putting like fine print in someplace. It can really be part of the body of the document and explain to students what they're going to get out of this.
And that wasn't happenstance. The people who designed that, the people who coordinate that program and who designed the outcomes for that course were well aware of the gen ed outcomes and actually participated, some of them, in framing them. I think it was the Council for General Education a couple of years before the task force did a syllabus audit where they looked at syllabi for gen ed courses being taught all over campus. And what they discovered was that many of those syllabi didn't even include the words general education anywhere. Sure. And general education is supposed to be a somewhat coherent, a foundational experience.
Right.
I would, if it were up to me, I would call it foundational education, because it's really there to provide a foundation for the rest of your education and actually for the rest of your life. You should also, this should all sort of be followed by, or should include, a topical outline, attentive schedule. I like to put my course schedule in a separate document.
And I do too. And I'm so glad to hear you say that, because now when I put it together, it's actually fairly detailed. I have a grid and days and dates and when assignments are going to be, not only when they're due, but when they're going to be assigned, because I find that I teach better when I hold myself to the same deadlines that I expect my students to be held to. And, with the caveat that, subject to change with notice.
Right.
So it's okay to have that sort of, and I call it a plan of study. So it's okay to have that study plan
Yeah,
appended to it.
I call it the course schedule.
Yeah.
If I in the days that I was handing out a physical syllabus, it was the final couple of pages of the syllabus. It was at the end.
Right.
Now that I make materials available electronically, it's a separate document, but it's they're labeled syllabus and course schedule, and the students get that. They know that.
And how granular? How deep down do you have to drill? Like, do you have to talk about learning outcomes for each day?
No, you don't need to. You don't need to do that. Some people probably do. Some people do that. But I think you should have learning outcomes for each day.
Right. Yes, this is true.
As an instructor, you should always go into each class session knowing what it is that you hope to accomplish that day, or what it is that you hope that your students will accomplish that day. But I don't think you have to include that. In the course schedule. That would make it a fairly lengthy and possibly intimidating document. Mine usually has 3 columns, a date, and then it says work to complete before class, and then work that will be completed during class or something like that. So or before class, in class, whatever.
Gotcha.
You're also supposed to identify required and optional texts in your syllabus, which is always a good idea, and provide at least a list of major assignments. So major papers, projects, experiences, things that are going to be going on during the course. And the next thing is to tell students how they're going to be evaluated. So, how is their grade going to be arrived at, including a grading scale if you're using points. And then course policies, any course policies that you have. If it happens to be a 300 level course, so that you can take it for either graduate or undergraduate credit, then you need to have some discussion of additional requirements for the graduate students, if there are any.
Right. And
this is really important because this is a legal thing. Every syllabus needs to include a statement about accommodations, the accommodation statement.
Right.
And this is just this statement comes from what used to be known as the Office of Disability Services and is now known as the Office for Student Access and Accommodation Services. And all it says is any student needing to arrange a reasonable accommodation for a documented disability should contact Student Access and Accommodation Services at 350 Fell Hall, 309-438-5853, or visit the website. And there's a link to the website. So we can put this statement out there, but that's really important to have this. And it's important not to deviate too much from this, or if any, from this language, because there are words there that have legal implications. So reasonable accommodation is one.
Right.
Each student who has a documented disability, which is another one, you can't just have a student come to you and say, "Hi, I need extra time to take my test."
And this is this phrase is key. That statement is key because it's the first step in a very important process, and one that, as an instructor, I'm very glad that there's an entire department on campus that just handles it. I'm serious because, I've worked at other institutions where starting the process was not as easy. Certainly, they did a great job taking care of students who had those needs to make accommodations, but starting that process, being notified that you had a student in your class that had this issue, or had an issue, was not easy. And so it is there is a very regimented process that students go through to demonstrate their need, and then to get that help, and then they are given a card. Or now, I think, with the name change this past week, they actually just changed the name to Student Access.
Monday.
To Student Access and Accommodation Services. Yeah, Monday. It's going to be electronic, but they will have documentation they provide you. So it's a very specific process. So it's important that we get the first step right by putting it in our syllabus the right way.
Right. Yeah. So, that's really all you have to have.
Yeah.
And I think the key is, not what you say, but how you say it.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that in our last couple of minutes here. I have gone to great pains, and I don't think I've been entirely successful yet, but I've gone to great pains not to make the syllabus sound like a legal contract, which I used to write contracts in a former career, or to make it sound like a list of commandments. And so what would you suggest that people do to kind of mitigate that effect?
Well, it's really important to mitigate that effect, especially when we're talking about our course policies, because this is really interesting. There's research that says that if students perceive the course policies as being you introduced me to the term communication aggression or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
But if they perceive them as being draconian
mm-hmm.
or arbitrary,
mm-hmm.
Or mean sounding, for lack of a better word.
Discouraging is the word I often see in research, especially involving like mobile technology and stuff. Yeah. Encouraging policies, discouraging policies, maybe more laissez-faire policies.
Yeah. And if students perceive the policies in that way, they react by pushing back.
Right.
And so you're setting up a sort of antagonistic relationship with your students mm-hmm. from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Even though you may not mean that. You may be thinking, oh, well, this is just what everybody says and how everybody says it. Mm-hmm. I personally, and a lot of really good teachers that I know, include in their policies a rationale for the policy.
Right.
So it doesn't seem just arbitrary or draconian. It's mm-hmm. like, this is what, when I'm teaching a writing course, it's really important that students come to class prepared mm-hmm. with some writing, because we are going to do things with that writing in class. We're going to, we might share it in a workshop situation. We might share it with a partner to get revision. We're always going to be doing something. And if you don't have it done, then you're kind of sitting on the sidelines while everybody else is moving ahead. And so I try to explain that in my policy about my policy about, timely work, the timely mm-hmm. submission of work, late work. So I think that's a good idea. There are a lot of sort of pre-crafted policies that you can pick up various places on the web. And I have a document that pulls a lot of them together that we mm-hmm. can link to this podcast. Okay. But there's a syllabus statement, on, mental health resources, which actually is very student friendly language. Mm-hmm. It starts out, life at college can get very complicated.
Right.
So that's a great that's a great policy. And there's a separate one for graduate students, sort of making it clear that mm-hmm. that counseling services are there for them as well. There's a policy on absences due to bereavement.
And that actually changed, I think, last academic year or maybe the spring before that, about how far they have to travel, and it kind of clarifies mm-hmm. that process. So that was something I remember also adding to my syllabus last year, and it's and again, I like it because I don't mind being told what these policies are or having to adhere to these policies as an instructor, because ultimately they make the learning easier, and they take, they help students. Same thing about Success Week which is when we're planning our teaching for a semester. Now here at Illinois State, we have Success Week, which is the week before final exam week, where we're not supposed to, pop a last minute major test or exam or have a major assignment due that wasn't talked about at the beginning of the semester. And I actually put a little blurb about Success Week in my syllabus.
Great idea.
So we're running out of time. So final thoughts about the nuts and bolts of a syllabus and how that relates to having a welcoming syllabus for students, something that's relatable.
I think the main thing I would say is that there are all of these statements from different places: absence due to bereavement, statement for classroom behavior, statement for academic integrity, attendance policies, all kinds of things, not all of which are written in student-friendly language. What I would suggest mm-hmm. is that you have in your syllabus a a personal statement, perhaps a rationale, with a link to the sort of official language statement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the absence to bereavement policy, and this one may be out of date now, students are eligible for up to 5 consecutive days, not including weekends or holidays. You know what? If my mom just died, mm-hmm. I don't want to read that.
Right.
I mean, I want to know that my professor gets it. Mm-hmm. And so I might say something in my syllabus, should you have a family, mm-hmm. Should you have a death in your family, mm-hmm. the university allows you to be absent without penalty for mm-hmm. a certain amount of time. The exact policy is available here,
right?
And just have a link to the policy.
And again, I think in that particular case, like the accessibility or the accommodation statement, I think that's a particular process now because the dean of students office gets involved with that.
There's a whole process they have to go through, and it's really, it's not going to be the first thing they're thinking about. So I think just making it clear that you understand that you get it, that, bad things happen to good people and you're going to help them work through that. So, mm-hmm. In terms of their academic, at least, to keep it from derailing them academically, if at all possible. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's basically it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot. And, it is a lot. And we'll have links to a lot of the stuff that we'll put together as this episode goes out.
We also have a template for a syllabus, by the way.
Yes. We'll link to that too. So.
Yeah. So that might be, and that just sort of puts things in order.
Right. So, the other thought that I had when we were preparing for this episode was, and I kind of went back to A Christmas Carol. You and I will sometimes throw out Jacob Marley references to each other and whatnot around the office, especially around the holiday times. And to poorly paraphrase Dickens, we shouldn't think about our syllabus one day a year, but all year round. And I find that if I go through the exercise of really honing my syllabus, then that's a document I use all semester, and I take notes on it.
Yes.
So that when I use it again the next semester. So hopefully, if people are listening to this podcast, this episode after the semester started, you should already have
too late.
Yeah, well, you should have already done your syllabus for the semester. Yes.
In some ways, it is too late.
It is too late, but it's not too late because this is, I think it's an iterative process and it's an ongoing process that we revisit these all the time, and we should, because they are so connected to our teaching. It's not just a one and done sort of document that you dust off every semester.
Right.
It's something that has to live and breathe and kind of evolve from semester to semester as you do your teaching. So, well, Claire, thank you again as always.
Thank you, Jim.
So that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Let's Talk Teaching. You can find out more about the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology on our website. That's ctlt.illinoisstate.edu. Until next time, for all of us here at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, I'm Jim G. Thanks for listening.